The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and the distant sound of a rushing river. Elara, a young woman with hair the color of spun gold and eyes like the summer sky, stood at the edge of the Whisper Wood, a dense, untamed forest that had been a part of her life ever since she was born. But today was different. Today, the whispers of the wind were not just background noise to Elara's life. They were calling to her, beckoning her into the woods. She had heard whispers before, of course. Growing up on the edge of the Whisper Wood, the murmurs of the wind had become the soundtrack of her life. Yet today, the whispers seemed clearer, more insistent. At first, they were faint and elusive, like shy lovers sharing secrets in the shadows. But as Elara stood there listening, the whispers grew louder, weaving together into a melody that was hard to ignore. Curiosity tugged at her like the North Star's pull on a sailor. It was a call to adventure, and though a part of her wanted to stay safe within the familiarity of her village, another part, a part that felt as old as the whispering trees themselves, was compelled to answer. Her fingers tightened around the hilt of the dagger at her side, a small comfort in the face of the unknown. The whispers promised both danger and intrigue, and Elara, with a heart full of courage and a mind brimming with questions, stepped into the Whisper Wood. The air around her shifted, becoming cooler, damper. The sun, once a friendly visitor, now peeked at her from behind a veil of thick leaves. Elara found herself in a world transformed. Gone was the familiar path she had walked countless times before. Instead, she saw twisted trunks that seemed to writhe like serpents and leaves so thick they blotted out the sun. Fear, cold and slithering, began to wind its way around her heart. She was lost, and in that moment, deep within the woods, she realized that the whispers had lured her here, deeper than she had ever ventured before. But what was their purpose? The wind sighed through the trees, and for a moment Elara thought she heard something amidst the rustling leaves. A word, a name, yet when she strained to listen, all she was left with was the whisper of the wind. Pushing aside her fear, Elara decided to make her way to the river. Surely there she would find a way out of this tangled wood. The whispers hadn't spoken again, but Elara trusted that if she followed the right path, they would guide her to wherever it was they wanted her to go. The river, when she finally found it, was not the babbling brook she remembered. Its waters, usually clear as crystal, were now choked with weeds, and its banks, usually welcoming and grassy, were hidden under a thick overgrowth of shrubs and vines. The sight of the river filled her with a strange sense of foreboding, as if the very essence of the woods was recoiling from her touch. As she moved deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder. Now they were urgent, almost desperate. Elara quickened her pace, driven by a mix of fear and determination. Was she being led to some hidden danger, or was there something else at play? Then, just as suddenly as they had started, the whispers stopped. The forest fell silent. Elara stood still, listening intently. The silence was heavy, oppressive, broken only by the gurgling of the nearby river. It was then that she noticed something odd. A glint of sunlight on metal, hidden amidst the tangled roots of a nearby tree. Hope surged through her, chasing away the fear that had been nipping at her heels. With newfound vigor, Elara pushed aside the branches, and there it was, half buried in the damp earth, a small wooden chest, its hinges and lock covered in moss. It was ancient, its surface adorned with strange symbols that seemed to writhe like living things. One symbol in particular caught her eye, a spiral that looked like a snail's shell, except that it seemed to hold a galaxy within its coils. Elara felt a connection to it, as if it were a long-lost part of herself. The chest was heavy, its bulk surprising given its size. But as Elara hefted it, she felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with excitement. What secrets did this chest hold? What mysteries lay dormant within its mossy confines? With the chest in tow, Elara continued her journey. The forest, which had felt so menacing moments ago, now seemed less threatening. The whispers might have ceased, but their presence lingered, urging her forward, promising revelation. Finally, the trees began to thin. Sunlight, shy at first, now poured through the canopy, painting the forest floor in dappled light. And there, nestled amidst the last of the trees, was a clearing. In the center stood a stone monolith, its surface etched with the same spiral that had adorned the chest. As Elara approached the monolith, the stones hummed with an energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. This place was ancient, its power palpable. The clearing, with its circle of standing stones and the moss-covered chest at her feet, felt like a place of forgotten rituals, a nexus of magic where the veil between the mundane and the mystical was at its thinnest. Ilara, her heart pounding in her chest, placed the chest at the base of the monolith. As the final rays of sunlight touched the stone, the clearing shimmered, the air thickened, and the monolith began to glow. Its surface, once etched with the spiral, now blazed with an otherworldly light. The light intensified, forming a portal, a gateway to somewhere beyond. Fear warred with curiosity in Ilara's heart. Should she step through the portal? What lay on the other side? She knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that she was meant to go through. The whispers had brought her here for a reason. And so, taking a deep breath, she stepped into the unknown. On the other side of the portal, Ilara found herself in a realm that seemed to exist outside of time. Towering trees, their leaves shimmering with otherworldly light, stretched towards a sky filled with 2 moons. The air buzzed with unseen energy, and the ground beneath her feet thrummed with a deep, resonant hum. Before her stood the Ancient Ones, beings of pure energy who had been slumbering beneath the Whisperwood, waiting for their champion to awaken. They had been watching Ilara, guiding her with their whispers, testing her courage and resolve. And now they were revealing themselves to her, not as fearsome monsters, but as wise, ethereal beings of pure energy. They spoke of a time before memory, of a world in balance, and of the ancient pact that bound them to the land. They told her of a darkness that had encroached upon their realm, corrupting the very essence of the Whisperwood, twisting its creatures and tainting its waters. And then they revealed Ilara's true heritage. She was not just a simple villager, but the descendant of a long line of protectors, of those who had kept the balance between the human world and the Whisperwood. It was a heritage that came with great responsibility, a responsibility to protect the delicate balance of the natural world and to stand against the encroaching darkness. The Ancient Ones bestowed upon her their wisdom and their power, empowering her to face the darkness that threatened to consume the Whisperwood. With their guidance, Ilara learned of a hidden spring deep within the forest, a spring whose waters held the power to purify the corrupted lands and restore balance to the Whisperwood. But the path to the spring was fraught with peril. Twisted creatures, their minds clouded by the encroaching darkness, guarded the way. Ilara, drawing strength from the Ancient Ones and armed with the knowledge of her heritage, set out on her perilous quest. Through trials and tribulations, Ilara proved her courage and compassion. She healed the sick, she soothed the troubled, and she fought valiantly against the forces of darkness. Finally, she reached the hidden spring, its waters clouded and corrupted. With a heavy heart, Ilara knew that the fate of the Whisperwood rested on her shoulders. Taking a deep breath, she waded into the spring. The water was freezing cold, yet as she immersed herself, she felt a surge of power. Chanting words of power bestowed upon her by the Ancient Ones, Ilara began the purification ritual. The water churned and bubbled, and then, miraculously, it began to clear. The corruption that had stained its waters receded, replaced by the purest spring water she had ever seen. With the spring purified, Ilara felt the darkness that had been plaguing the Whisperwood lift. The forest sighed, its trees rustling in gratitude as the balance was restored. The Ancient Ones, their forms shimmering with new-found energy, thanked Ilara for her bravery and her compassion. They had chosen her for a reason, and she had proven herself worthy. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Ilara knew it was time to return. The Whisperwood, rejuvenated and balanced, was now safe, for now. The Ancient Ones, their power restored, would watch over it, protecting it from any future threats. Stepping back through the portal, Ilara found herself in the familiar clearing. The portal shimmered, then faded, leaving behind no trace of the otherworldly realm it had connected to. The Ancient Ones had shown her wonders beyond her wildest dreams, but they had also bestowed upon her a heavy responsibility. With a newfound sense of purpose, Ilara knew that her life would never be the same. The whispers of the wind, once a mere background to her life, now carried with them the weight of ancient secrets and the call to adventure. And Ilara, forever changed by her journey, was ready to listen,